Recorded. Now, you heard what the professor said, and I think the main contention here, looking at it from outside, is looking at Kenya as if they're interfering with the internal politics of Somaliland. Now, Kenya is an interested party. We've all agreed. Yeah. So how do we stay out and still remain in?
Well, we have diplomatic processes. We have KDF in there. But let me first start with the MPs. The issue of the MPs is manufactured outrage. It's really a non-issue. Members of parliament from Kenya have traveled to Somalia many times. When Madobe, who is president of Jubaland, was being sworn in, a whole plane load of members of parliament arrived there. Even when Somalia at the federal level, who runs the airspace, had said there should be no planes landing in Somalia. We had no issue with that. As Prof said, there are hundreds or dozens of members of the Somali parliament who transit through Nairobi, stay in Nairobi, come for a conference in Nairobi. There's no issue. We are not at war with Somalia. We have good diplomatic relations. There are 15 flights minimum daily that go to Mogadishu from Nairobi. Prof you heard is the consultant of the Prime Minister of Somalia now. He has very good relations with very many people. And not just that, many professors, business people, politicians have relations on both ways. So really, to ask why did a number of members of parliament go, or they sneaked, it's really a creation of the press and a number of people in the security sector. For what, I don't know.
How could it be a creation of the press and yet they were stopped at the airport?
Because it's important for the press to ask, why are you stopping these people? What crime was committed? You didn't hear anybody being accused of any crime. There is no crime with traveling out of the country while you are a member of parliament, unless it is while you are a Somali member of parliament going to Somalia. There is no such crime. There is no requirement to report to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Members of parliament don't report to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. There is a requirement under standing orders for the speaker to be notified. Yeah. And the issue, you are a lawyer, is that if you don't attend 8 consecutive sittings, then you vacate your seat. So when you are traveling outside on official business and you're going to miss a number of sittings, the speaker needs to be aware so that certain processes come through. If at all there are issues members of parliament have had, there is a committee of parliament called the Privileged Committee that would have dealt with. So this issue about the members of parliament, in fact, one of the dailies said that all the 11 of them were clansmen of President Farmajo. I mean, nothing could be further from truth. Not even one of them belongs to President Farmajo. So I think this is really much ado about nothing in terms of the members of parliament. Members of parliament have a right to travel. They have huge security issues. They emanate from Somalia. They are a friendly country. They have a right to discuss and come up with solutions for the problems of their region. So that's as far as the members of parliament.
Could I just ask something so that you clarify regarding members of parliament? Yeah. The contention is about how they went there, who they met, who they met,
they met with the president. It's not illegal to meet.
And what they discussed.
What they discussed is private.
How that will benefit the country.
You ask them. Nobody has asked, by the way, welcome back. You have traveled. What did you discuss? You are the media, you could have very easily asked. The issue is members of parliament sneaked out. They have committed treason. This dog whistling is not appropriate. The perception is that if you are a Somali and you are a member of parliament, you are not allowed to travel out of this country if you are traveling to Somalia. That's not correct. Members of parliament, just like any other person, have the right to liberty to travel.
Okay, so there was no problem, absolutely. The speaker has ruled on this.
They don't have to call the president and tell him we are traveling. They don't have to tell the speaker. They don't have to tell the Foreign Affairs Ministry. They don't have to tell the security sector. If you are a member of parliament and you want to travel and you're not committing a crime, please go ahead and travel.
Then answer the last question regarding that. Yes. Why or where does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs come in this?
Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in this particular issue, if things are okay, if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs actually wanted things to be okay, they would be the ones asking the members of parliament, can we send you to go and have dialogue on the other side? Can you go and meet our ambassador on the other side? Okay. When arms of government are working well, dialogue is important. Our biggest security problem is Somalia. There are many Kenyans losing their lives there. There is a terrorist organization based in Somalia that is killing many of our people here. Our education sector in northern Kenya has ground to a halt. Our transport sector in northern Kenya has ground to a halt. There are daily bombings. This is a huge problem. It's not as easy as Prof said. Education, we understand everybody, it's supposed to be the requirement of the national government. Well, the national government has failed in that fact. In fact, if you were to ask me, I would ask the county governments in northern Kenya to request the national government to cede part of the education function back to the county government so that we have creative solutions to the education problem. For example, maybe we should employ the retired teachers who are locals. Maybe we should look at the UT issue. Maybe we should look at...
That's the proposals that were made.
Yeah,
the proposals were made. Okay, take us back to that looks like a diplomatic gaffe, the relationship between Kenya and Somalia, and the fact that they're looking at Kenya as interfering. And the direct question is, what is the issue between Mogadishu and Jubaland that
so in
can
my
be
opinion,
resolved
and these two gentlemen probably are more well-versed in that than I, but what I see is there's a big problem between the regional governments and the center in Somalia.
Okay.
It's a normal thing. We have the same issue here at a lower level, counties and the national government. Nairobi, the central government, the national government here just pulled out functions from the county of Nairobi. But the other side has less institutional framework to resolve issues. The regional governments are armed. Oftentimes they are propped by foreign governments, whether from the Middle East or from the region. Part of their creation also was the foreign interest of a number of the regional governments and the Arab countries in the Gulf. So there's a huge problem, there's huge tension between the regional government and the center. And there's an election coming, as Prof said.
In 2021.
Now, since that has happened,
yes,
we have a close relationship with Juba. The idea, as Prof said, was we have a buffer. Well, that buffer is no longer there. It doesn't work. Right now, Al-Shabaab is completely on our side. So that buffer is irrelevant as far as the security situation in northern Kenya is concerned. Now that the buffer has crumbled, we still hold, many of people in the security sector hold Jubaland as dear. Because we are close to Jubaland and the administration in Jubaland and the national government, that deals with foreign affairs, by the way, that deals with foreign defense. Defense and foreign affairs, even in Somalia, are a function of the national government. Of course, they should first deal with Al-Shabaab, not fight regional forces, but primarily that is their function. So Somalia sees what happened in Mandera, for example, where we hosted, and this is not about Kabuga, this is a fact that the Kenya government has not denied that they have hosted that gentleman in Mandera, where we help transport forces from Doble through Kenyan territory, through the counties of Wajir and Mandera to fight in Bulahawa. They see that as interference in their foreign relations, interference in their defense. If we have interest, and we do have many interests. As I said, our biggest nightmare security-wise is Somalia and Al-Shabaab. If we have those legitimate interests, there are legitimate ways to deal with them. Okay. Not hysteria, not shrill. They are diplomatic, security, legitimate ways to deal with them.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Rashid, because I want to ask Prof if, in his opinion, we've made diplomatic blunders with this, but you go first.
No, I share most of what was said by my colleagues. I think clearly we are at a critical juncture.
As Kenya?
As Kenya, and in relations with Somalia. I think just looking ahead, these two countries cannot continue on this path of escalation. They need to calm down around a table and see a way out of this crisis. I think June is the crunch date when Kenya will probably know the fate of the ICJ ruling. But that is a separate issue. These two countries have had a long history of animosity and tensions. And, you know, there are clearly structural issues which are at play. One, of course, is the perception that, Somalia has to be irredentist, and assertive Somalia has to extend its tentacles to northern Kenya and Ogaden. And that, I think, explains a lot of the fear in Nairobi and Addis Ababa, historic view that a resurgent Somalia will necessarily fuel pan-Somali nationalism, and then we will see crisis. But clearly, if you look at northern Kenya today, and Abdul Qadir can tell you a lot, pan-Somalism is no longer a political threat. It doesn't exist. You know, people are well adjusted to their status as Kenyan citizens. What they lack actually is security. And I think I want to emphasize the point of security, because if you look at the way we have handled security in northern Kenya and the buffer idea, the buffer idea stems from a military concept called forward defense, in which you protect the homeland by putting your forces beyond your borders. This has been practiced by bigger powers. It is resource intensive. It's also very costly politically. Kenya started from a low curve. It was always a peaceful nation, inward looking, never had you know, a militarized foreign policy like Ethiopia. So when we went into Juba, we basically didn't know what was going on. And I think rather than Kenyans manipulating, it is the other way around. It is those people who are...
2011
exactly.
Okay.
There is a counter manipulation that has also happened. So Kenya is also as much a victim as it is, you know, a perpetrator.
They didn't have an option at that time, did they?
Exactly, they didn't have an option. So what I think Kenya needs to do is to look at, to review the broader Jubaland strategy, where we are at, separately from negotiations with Somalia.
Okay.
I think clearly this is an election year. There is, first of all, an urgent need to calm the tensions, to avoid any escalation, and then to progressively look. These two countries are actually much closer than people think. Okay. They share a lot in common. There are 3 million Somalis who speak the same language. This is a huge soft power capital for this country. You know, if you go to Somaliland, if you go to Mogadishu, you will find young Kenyan boys and girls working in hotels. You will find Swahili spoken,
teachers,
you know, including teachers. You know,
Mm.
Somalia is now a Swahili-speaking nation, thanks to the diasporization and, you know, that huge, you know, it was unfortunate, tragic, but at the same time, it has brought these two countries together. Al-Shabaab has also brought us together, you know. So we need, I think, a common strategy, and that I recognize all what Professor Kagwanja has said, that you have, you know, an elite in Mogadishu that is making very narrow political calculations, very short term.
Okay.
You know, hopefully, as we move to an election year and then the country settles, we will have a strategic dialogue.
Having recognized that, and of course the powers that be know what you're telling me, how do they deal with it? That's another question, because having recognized that exactly, those calculations that may be myopic, how do you deal with it? But let me go to Prof now. Prof, even as you comment, do you think that we have made a diplomatic problem with this?
Kenyans?
Yes, as Kenya.
I don't think so, because part of what we ourselves have advised and literally said is the right thing to do is not to escalate the situation. And this is not from the Kenyan side alone. There are sober voices in Somalia, within Vira Somalia, who do not want to see the escalation. Ken, I can confess to you that the first time I heard about Somali invasion in Kenya was on Wednesday. And a message was sent to me by a colleague in Mogadishu and told me Kenyans should be aware, we can share it after this, that Kenyans should be aware that the government in Vira Somalia want to escalate the conflict with Kenya for political purposes only, and we are not supporting that. We are not supporting that. And I couldn't understand who the we are in.
And then a week later it happened.
We shared that, and then a week later, you see this thing happen. For me, who has been analyzing Jubaland, I said, it did not take me by surprise. And even what is happening, and even the end game of this is very clear. Vira Somalia want to capture a city called Buale, which is the traditional capital of Jubaland.
Okay.
And then they want to have an election in Buale and declare Ahmed Madobe illegal, a fugitive, and therefore go for war with it. Unfortunately, this is what Madobe and his militia have been fighting against. Therefore, when this was happening, they were moving their troops north. I can tell you certainly, Somalia is back to civil war. It is because people are emphasizing the skirmishes of what has happened with the Kenyans. The real war, as we speak now, is between the Madobe forces and the Vira Somalia forces. That is civil war in a huge sense. And the big question will be asked is, what is Kenya's role in this? Because Kenya is not in Somalia as Kenya. This is, people keep on loosely saying KDF in Somalia. KDF is not in Somalia. What we have in Somalia is AMISOM. And AMISOM is allocated Sector 1 and Sector 2, I mean, the two regions. Gedo is not in the hands of Kenya. And it's a very critical town. In fact, the Madobe team would have wanted Kenya to control Gedo so that it is in charge of the whole of Jubaland. But that's not a Kenya issue. Gedo is not is in both in Ethiopia and Kenya. It is your equivalent of Alsace-Lorraine in Germany and France, the border state, which is contested. So Ethiopia would like to control Gedo. Kenya would have to have influence in Gedo because it's near Mandera and related issues. And Jubaland see that as really the point of vulnerability, therefore. So what my colleague has called short-term calculation is, of politicians is what is undermining region this. And these short-term calculations revolve around the coming election. It is
all elite-driven.
It's all elite-driven. It is certain that the language in Mogadishu and all the country is that this is the time for Hawiye to be president. Now, it's clan politics. And how then do you ensure that Marhan continue for a second term without... So two theories are coming up. One, we either extend this government for 2 terms, and then we have election after 2 years. That is an option that is going on in Mogadishu as we speak. But how would you justify a second term? A country at war, a president can declare a state of emergency. And we've done this in this country in different sectors, that we are at war, therefore the term is extended.
That's a possible proposal,
no, that's one way out.
On the table.
Yes, the second thing is, if you whip Somali nationalism or pan-Somali nationalism, then you sweep back to power because you are popular. This is what the issue of maritime had done. Whereas Kenya was escalating the issue of maritime dispute with Somalia, even Kenyan Somalians, if there was a referendum or at that time, 90 to 95% of Kenyan Somalians would have supported Somalia, which is strange, because they were whipped into the situation that Kenya is encroaching on a territory that is Somali territory. And that was why this issue of maritime had to be hashed down. Thanks to our friends, international friends, who helped to hash it down. Because the maritime issue is no longer an issue, then you have to escalate the Jubaland issue.
Still for the same
For the same reason, because you want to win the 2021 election. You have to do short-term calculation. And the issue is, Madobe is really the greatest enemy of Vira Somalia, because he is the one who has hosted most of the conferences for federal leaders. So he's the ringleader, actually. This is what we're saying. He's the ringleader.
I think if I can just come in slightly on that.
Yes.
I think the issue of Kenya appearing to have a vested interest in a single person for over 2 decades also complicates matters. And I think
Jubaland.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think if I were a Kenyan strategist, I would probably be thinking of ways, first of all, of disengaging and leaving that country.
But already he says it's no longer tenable. I think you're the one who said.
Yes. That is one thing. And then secondly, to also encourage Jubaland to find a much more amenable figure who can be acceptable to all sides. both at the federal level, but also center. But that's not for us, you know, it is for Somalis.
And even as you mentioned, is this the reason why the government, every time there's swearing in Juba, a huge delegation has to go to Jubaland?
It is part of the mistake,
It is
in my opinion, that
part of the
we
mistake.
as a country are making. I think
Okay.
Somalia has major security problems. It's been a failed state for a long time, and it's recovering from those security problems. Second, Somalia is going to elections, and just like every country, there are huge election issues, and politicians will play those issues, whether in Kenya, Somalia, or elsewhere. I think the part of the problem is, we said there is an elite problem in Somalia. There's also an elite security problem in Kenya. Part of the mindset that there is pan-Somalism, there is a problem with Northern Kenya. Prof just now said, if you had taken an opinion poll, 90% of the people of Northern Kenya would have supported. I mean, that is complete hogwash, if you ask me. How do you know? The people of, who did he conduct if you had conducted? Look, I don't know what people in Prof's shoes gain from trying to exclude the Somalis of Kenya from the rest of Kenya. This country...
Is that the net effect?
No,
he said?
You should have read Prof's readings. I do read his writings. So let's not go there. Bottom line, the people, historically, after Moi, the people of Northern Kenya came in from the cold. This was cemented when we brought in the new constitution, when they voted highest figures so they are very much clear in their mind on those matters. These issues are security issues as far as Northern Kenya is concerned. And the reason why we are exporting this problem to Somalia is because we are failing to deal with our security issues here. Let us.
So are we looking for a scapegoat or someone to do it?
Absolutely. Let me finish.
Okay.
So I think let us separate these issues. If you want us to have a discussion about Somalia, Prof would want to have a discussion about Somalia. Let us have a discussion about the problems we in this country are facing. Yeah. Before we go to Corona, before we go to the locusts, before we go to the economic issues and our political issues, our biggest problem in Northern Kenya right now is security. Because of the lack of security, we're having huge problems with education and all other sectors. Prof said rightly that the locals have a role to play in terms of providing information, in terms of supporting the security elements. But the primary responsibility lies with the government of Kenya. Now, the people in Mandera go mad when we are having no teachers because we are not providing security.
Yes.
And you are providing armed support to the regional government of Jubaland. I mean, where is your interest? First, primarily, it has to be to secure your homeland, not to try and secure warlords across the border. That is where the problem in Mandera right now is. As a result of our misadventure in supporting a warlord who was being chased out of his own country, we have people who are in hospital. We have, today, I was just reading a statement now, the county assembly of Mandera has stopped sittings. The county government has asked staffers not to appear in the offices tomorrow because they are not sure whether they'll be secure or not. Huge problems which we need to address. Issues about MPs and XY, those should not be what should focus our minds right now. What should focus our minds right now is how do we secure this country, how do we come together and handle those issues.
Okay. And again,
can I get from Prof? Yes,
let me first defend myself.
I'll come to you.
Let me defend myself as a Kenyan. If you do what I do for your living, you cannot be parochial. You cannot afford to be parochial, to think about that ethnic group and this one. Mijugu, I can tell you certainly this year, and Kenyans are listening, my 70% of my income, what I lived on in 2018, 2019, and largely 2020, has come from Somalis. Are you getting it?
Maybe you should report to the CID.
What do you mean?
Why are you
No, Somali Kenyans.
Why are you traveling to Somalia?
Not traveling to Somalia. Listen, don't try to bring negative things here. Afe is listening. Afe. I have traveled with him across the world as advisor to the UN Security Council. My friend Mahabub, I have traveled to him within the world, and he placed me as his advisor as IGAD. I was advising Somalia as part of IGAD. It's not me jumping to Somalia. So let's not parochialize this.
No, he was joking.
I was just saying earlier on TV you had called traveling to Somalia treason.
No, I didn't say treason. If you look at the pattern of my arguments, I mean, today we have 50,000 Kenyans working in Mogadishu. 50,000. And this is a fact that was reported to our government officially by the Prime Minister of Somalia in February, when he made the state visit here, that we have 50,000 and we need more.
Yeah.
Because
construction, hotel industry.
Yes, hotel industry. Yeah. All the major hotels
teachers,
are run by Kenyans. House helps, the domestic workers in Somalia, most of them are Kenyans. So we are integrated to that extent, and therefore what we have seen is what he correctly described as short-term calculations of politicians. And I think the challenge we have is to basically get over the short-term calculation of politicians and secure our relationship. There are many leaders of Somalia, but particularly in the federal states that I interact with, that have invested millions and billions here. I had tea with a colleague from Somalia, and he made a joke which I thought was very interesting, that the Somalis who left Somalia to refuge and went to America and the rich diasporas are still workers. Those who came to Kenya became investors and are wealthy.
It's true.
So this country has done well for Somalia. And what the Prime Minister was arguing when we came here, that we need to build a larger commonwealth of development, because development is the only thing that's going to give us peace.
Okay.
It's going to give us freedom.
No, that's a good point.
Yes.